Welcome, Bridge Builders, to the next episode. Once again, grateful to be here with y'all. Thanks for giving us a listen. Make sure you follow us on our social media feeds. We got Instagram, we got YouTube specifically. Make sure you go subscribe to YouTube, check out the videos there. Leave us a comment, if you like what we're talking about. If you disagree, I want to know about it so we can have a bit of a conversation, okay? If you do have a conversation in comments, just remember this is a space where we're understanding one another and coming together, even though we have differences of opinion. So, no pejoratives. Don't call people stupid, dumb, whatever. We can disagree without being disagreeable. So, again, we're coming to you from the Utah Podcast Studio, lovely recording studio here in West Jordan, Utah. If you want to check them out at utahpodcaststudio.com, they can help you get started with your own podcast, any help that you need there. Okay. All right. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about, I'm titling this Aftershocks in Zion. Basically, there's been some kind of big events here in Utah, in kind of the broader LDS subculture of the United States specifically. And this isn't like a gossip, hot take kind of thing. Like, I'm just kind of sharing some thoughts that I've had about some of the recent events that have happened. So, and then what can we do to look at these events with kind of a bridge building twist on it and understand a little bit more and have some empathy. The first one, I didn't even really write this down necessarily, but kind of one of the biggest things, about a month ago here in Utah, at Utah Valley University, a prominent right-wing influencer named Charlie Kirk was shot and killed. That was really shocking to, I think, at least the United States, if not the world. He was kind of a big voice in conservative podcasts, and just like he did like these public debates on college campuses with students trying to prove him wrong, is kind of his whole thing. And it was a very for it to happen so close to home was really shocking to me. I really empathize a lot with his family. He was about my age. He had 2 kids about the same age as my kids, and yeah, for it to happen, 20 miles from where I live is kind of crazy. The alleged shooter supposedly at least grew up LDS. It's kind of unknown how active he and his family were in the church, especially as of late. And this has been a big thing, like there's a lot of voices out there saying he was a martyr in a lot of ways. He was like a godsend to our country. And there's other people who are saying like he almost deserved to die, and from like what happened. And I don't know, it's just, it breaks my heart how polarizing we are. Okay. So I don't want to get too political with this because it can be so divisive, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't. But something that happened close to home, and it's been on my mind a lot lately. So maybe I'll talk about it more in a future episode, but I kind of just want to leave it at that. That was kind of one of the first things that happened lately. And then, like back to back, President Russell Nelson passed away. He was 101 years old, man. Long life. So there's now the changing of the guard, so to speak, in the Latter-day Saint hierarchy in the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 Apostles. So I think yesterday was his actual funeral, so it's suspected that Dallin H will take the mantle of prophet, president of the church. And he has kind of been seen as a somewhat controversial figure, especially among nuanced Mormons, ex-Mormons, because of his position on gay marriage, mainly just the whole LGBTQ population. He has some strong opinions on what that means, and there's things in his past that he has advocated for as a lawyer, as a judge, and now that he's going to be the president of this multi-million member church, this worldwide church, it'll be interesting to see what he does with that and how he moves the church forward. He has surprised me sometimes, I'll be honest, with some of the things he said. So I don't want to... What am I trying to say here? I don't want to like judge him too bad. And I don't want to like point out where he's wrong necessarily. More I want to talk about where some of the things he said and done have caused harm to people. People who have left the church, people who are gay, lesbian, queer, trans. And I think if we can just recognize that, that's kind of like the first thing, that some of the things that he said, that members of the church have said around these topics hurt people. And they don't feel like there's a spot for them in the church. I can empathize with that in some ways, that I don't feel like there's a spot for me in the church. In some ways, I wish I could kind of go back. Oh, sorry. Some ways I wish I could go back and participate as a non-believer, just to have the sense of community still. And I don't feel that necessarily. I feel like by and large the membership of the church are good people who love me, love people like me, love queer people. And yet there's this sense that we have to follow the rules, and there's these specific rules around these topics that you must follow in order to join the tribe, so to speak, right? So a lot of kind of like psychology things that I'm no expert in by any means. So forgive my ignorance in this space, but you know, people, we get into these little tribes, these little pockets of people who are like-minded, and they we kind of have these measuring sticks of like, oh, well, how much of a member are you, right? This happens in politics. This happens in professional careers. This happens in pretty much all spaces of life, right? And it makes sense from kind of like an evolutionary biology standpoint to me that we had these tribes growing far back in our history, and outside groups were seen as a threat. Physical threat that could wipe us out, and therefore we needed something to bind us together. There's a great book called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari that I really enjoyed, where he goes into the history of Homo sapiens and even other Homo species in our past, and he talks a lot about this. So I would check that book out if you're interested in this topic. Something that I really enjoyed. I read a couple of years ago. So yeah, something I kind of want to talk about was just like how we build these tribes around these topics, and it's okay for us to defend our position. And we can recognize that, I would hope at least we can recognize that other people view something different, and that's okay. They're not evil. They're not bad. They're not input whatever you think. I think that we just like to demonize a lot of people for not seeing something the same way that we do. And so that's what I'm trying to do here with this podcast. I'm just going solo still, so this is kind of, sorry, forgive, maybe this is a little awkward, me just talking, so I'm sorry. But, yeah, I just really feel strongly about this, that there needs to be a middle ground. There needs to be common ground that we can find, and we can look past differences and move on and just be chill with each other. Years ago, before I started this podcast, the thing that kind of sparked it was a spiritual prompting I had. I was going through my faith crisis. I was not really sure where I stood with things, and yet I felt this very strong spiritual impression, like, how cool would it be to have a community where ex-members and current members could, like, come together? And I just, like, imagine, like, a barbecue at a park, whatever. Like, for the most part, we're pretty much strangers, but we have ties to this one thing that is the church to some degree, and we can recognize that this is something that we share or did share, and yet we're still cool with each other. We can play lawn games, and those who want to drink a beer can drink a beer, and those who just want to drink their diet soda, their diet swig or whatever, can drink that, and just, like, have a good time with each other. So that's, like, kind of my dream. That was just something that sparked this whole thing. So, anyway, going back to the original topic of Dallin Oaks taking over the presidency of the church. We'll see where that goes. I'm sure there'll be topics in future podcasts about kind of the stuff that goes on with that, just because this is a very hot topic among Latter-day Saints, is like, how do we work with the queer community, and what is expected of them to be members of the church? And I kind of see a shifting of things, especially with people of my generation and younger. There are prominent gay members of the church who are married, to someone of the same sex. They're active in their wards, as far as I know, and they're largely accepted for the most part. And I think that's really cool. So we've grown a lot in this space. I've seen it in myself, in people around me. But we do kind of have this leadership, kind of this top-down thing that's kind of maybe trying to put a damper on some of it. So maybe I'm wrong. Let me know if you think of something different. But yeah, that's just kind of what I'm thinking about that. Speaking of the passing of Russell Nelson, I wanted to share one of my favorite quotes of his that I found. Oh man, I just had it and then it disappeared. He was prophet for a long time, and he became prophet while I was on my mission. And I feel like before my mission, I didn't really know about him too much. I don't know why that was. Maybe that's just, you kind of really only pay attention to the prophet himself. For some reason, like, he never really stood out to me as, like, a very prominent speaker when he was an apostle. But maybe that's just me. But then, being the president of the church for about 10 years, 8 years, I think, came to know him a lot better, I guess, in a lot of ways. So this quote from him, I just really loved, and I shared this with my family on the day of his passing. He says, "Imagine how different our world could be if more of us were peacemakers, building bridges of understanding, rather than walls of prejudice, especially with those who may see the world differently than we do." Just something that, if he would have been, if he would have been a guest on the show, I think he probably would have said that, So, overall, I see him as a bridge builder. I know there are some quotes of his where he talked about not taking counsel from those who don't believe, and that kind of hurt a lot of people out of the church. I think he had decent intentions with that statement, and he was talking more about spiritual things. So I can understand, but I can also understand, why people were upset about that. But overall, I think he was a good man. I think, honestly, all of the leaders of the church are good men. I wish we could see some more good women up there, but trying to do their best with the knowledge that they have, the beliefs that they have, and there's just kind of this bureaucracy that's kind of in there that can shake things up a little bit and make it more difficult. But yeah, overall, I can appreciate like what they do. I wish they did some things a little bit different. That's okay, you know. I think they're growing, they're changing. I've seen that, and it's slowly getting better. So I'm grateful for that. And then I think it was the day after Nelson died that there was a shooting, a mass murder at a Latter-day Saint chapel in Michigan. Little town just south of Flint. I believe, I forget the name of it, but basically there's still a lot we don't know about the shooter and his motives, but kind of from what we can tell is that he had very anti-Mormon feelings. As far as I know, he was never a member of the church. He may have dated somebody who was a member of the church a while ago. But he called Mormons like the Antichrist, and unfortunately decided that he needed to take action with that. I'm assuming there's some mental health issues that were there, not to excuse his behavior by any means. He was a veteran from Iraq or Iran, and, you know, can't even imagine how that changes somebody to go through war like that. And so he crashed his truck into the side of the chapel during sacrament meeting, poured gasoline on the ground, lit it on fire, lit the chapel on fire, and started shooting. And I believe four members of the congregation were killed, and then police killed him shortly thereafter in a shootout. Several other people were injured. I think they're all doing well as far as I can tell. I hope they are, at least. And this really just like shook, from what I could tell, the local community, the Michigan community, right? But then also just Utah, you know. Mass shootings are a thing here in the United States, and I've got views about that. I won't share them here, but it's just kind of the reality we live in. And it just breaks my heart that people died because of a difference in belief. And that people are using this to promote their own political ideals. People are seeing it as sometimes, from what I can tell, news articles and comments and stuff, like it's either an attack on Christianity, attack on Mormons specifically. This is a sign of the times. Just the whole conversation about gun rights in America. And I don't know, like 4 people's lives ended that day. 5 if you include the shooter. But something that gave me a lot of hope was seeing that there were several GoFundMes that were started for the victims, you know, for those who went through it. And there was even a GoFundMe that was started for the shooter's family, his spouse or partner and child, maybe children. And from what I can tell, a lot of Latter-day Saints contributed to that GoFundMe. And I thought that was really cool that they were so willing to forgive, in a way, I guess, and see that his family had nothing to do with this, but they're also mourning and dealing with something that I can't even imagine. And I think it's really cool that the community came around them and decided to, you know, mourn with those that mourn, if we're quoting scripture here. I still remember my scriptures a little bit. And I don't know, that brought me a lot of hope. I also heard that there were nurses that were on strike nearby for labor rights when the shooting happened, and when they found out like what happened, they dropped their signs, you know, and they're like, we're going to help these people as best we can. You know, they provided aid on scene, helping them get to the hospital and so forth. And I think that's really cool. It's unfortunate that tragedy sometimes is the thing that has to bring us together. I wish we would be a little bit more upfront about that when things aren't so tragic. But yeah. Something else that's kind of going wrong with this conversation, and I've seen it a lot even before this shooting happened, is the whole "Are Mormons Christian?" topic. A lot of, specifically evangelicals, I think, but a lot of Christians kind of see Mormonism as this own little like sect, this own little like cult, its own little branch from Christianity, and they don't consider them to actually be Christians. Whereas you'll see Latter-day Saints all the time, like, you know, commenting on these, like posting, it's like, it's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Of course we're Christians. We believe in Jesus Christ. Just kind of my thoughts about that. I think both parties can be right in a way. And I kind of wanted to see how we can like kind of come together on this a little bit. So, first off, I don't think anyone should necessarily gatekeep the title of Christian. Like if there's no true Scotsman fallacy, right? Like, oh, well, you say you're Christian, but you're not a true Christian. A true Christian believes in these creeds, believes in whatever, that Jesus and God, like the Trinity, for instance, where Latter-day Saints don't believe in that. And so I find it interesting that they're trying to gatekeep this so much, like this title, like, oh no, you're not part of us. Like, we don't want you to be part of us. And Latter-day Saints just kind of like yearning for that. And also I can recognize, you know, like they've had a very different history than our movement. I mean, our movement's very young, considerably. We're 200 years old, whereas Christianity in general is closer to 2,000. A lot more time that things have developed and progressed and so forth. And so when someone says that Mormons aren't Christian, I'm kind of there to like back up the Mormons a little bit and be like, hey, like, who's telling you that you have to like hold these people accountable, right? And gatekeep this term. But then also just being able to recognize that, you know, they've grown up with these set of beliefs of what a Christian is, what a Christian acts like, what a Christian believes. And so I can recognize that they've probably just have a difference in understanding and so forth. And so having a conversation about it, you know, bringing people together, recognizing that just because someone thinks Christian, like Mormons are a cult, and doesn't mean like, I mean, there's still a person there behind that who has those beliefs. And something about our culture these days is that everything is through a screen, through a keyboard, not a person-to-person like connection. And I think so many of our problems would be fixed if we could just like sit down and have a chat with people. I've seen that in my own life, you know. So yeah, some big things have happened around here as of late. Some tragedies, some deaths. But also there's been sparks of hope within that. And yeah, I just felt like it was an elephant in the room I didn't want to not discuss here. So let me know what you think. Leave a comment if you agree, if you disagree, if you have something else you want to talk about, like on this episode. I'd be happy to hear it. Remember, check us out on our social medias. Follow us on Spotify. Leave a rating. You know, I'd love to see a review, how I can improve, how I can do better. Again, I know I'm solo here, so it's kind of this weird monologue kind of thing. But I'm trying to keep it natural, keep a natural flow to stuff. And I don't like to highly edit my podcasts and so forth. So, yeah, thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next week.